You set your fire, light the sky, your spirit is one with me. Your wings span the mighty ocean, your eyes see everything. The slightest of your motions can make the continents ring. Yet in all your might and glory, you vanished from the skies, leaving just another story amidst millions of man-made lives. They tell of how you fell from the sky.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas. My guest today is Gordon Duff, and we've just been listening to you, Gordon, reply to this ADL shill that was on the foreign television station with you. And you pointed out very well, I think, and I don't want to repeat myself too much here, but you pointed out that our enemy is the banksters, and they're taking us off trillions of dollars a year in interest on something that's ours.
That's pretty much the case. There's no way to run a country here, and we have a couple of taxes. You know, we talked yesterday. One of them is $1 trillion of interest that we're paying, which is the Federal Reserve, a group of banks, largely foreign, set up in 1913 by a group of immigrants from Europe, and you know, we can point out a certain ethnicity here. I don't think we necessarily need to do this, but it's what they are. That $1 trillion a year is more than our defense budget, which we don't need to spend. It's the future of our children. It's the future of our country. It's mortgaged us to the point where we're essentially like an American family, where mom and dad each have an entire pocket full of Visa cards, totally maxed out, and they wonder why they can't feed their kids anymore. That's the condition we're in. And of course, the things we add to that are the rigged markets. The rigged markets are, of course, fuel. They have now rigged food in the U.S., which is up around 30%, claiming they have a bad corn harvest. As far as personal wealth goes in the U.S., we have a game we call pump and dump, where Americans are encouraged to save money by putting it in 401ks or real estate periodically, and the value of these things is gutted to nothing, meaning that Americans have no wealth. The average American family, if we went back 25 years ago, had equity in a home, savings in a 401k. Average family worth about $25,000. With families, of course, with much more than that. If you worked 20 years in an automobile plant, you would have had $85,000, $90,000 in a 401k. General Motors was the biggest automobile company. The biggest single investment would have been General Motors stock. Overnight, General Motors stock went from $54 to 2 cents.
This was an attack on General Motors. This was an attack on American industry.
And of course, and for each one of those individuals, their homes, which they've been paying on for an average of 15 years apiece, went from equity, where homes were supposed to go up between 4 to 8% per year, and the payments that you made were the primary assets that you had. Yet people were encouraged to buy large homes and to invest their family wealth there. And rather than going up 8% a year, our real estate market went down 45%, and it left every American with no savings, left every American with debt, and what had been their money, that money still exists. All of that money, esoteric as it is, exists. The U.S. simply went into debt, gave that money to and these are all foreign banks. We now owe it as a country. They have the money. The money exists internationally, outside the United States. The same thing was done with the EU.
Gordon, right now, well, just let me interject a few points and questions in here. You know, we're being this is basically a war against middle class Americans. We got the elite sitting at the top.
There is no middle class in America. And this is my morning, and I'm dealing caffeine free here right now, which I'll tell you, this takes me down an entire notch, which I think is probably good. The war against America is waged by the front group to wage war against the middle class. Is called the Republican Party. And those are the people that claim they're going to keep you safe from the boogeyman, keep that slightly dusty area under the bed as a place you'll be able to hide. The complaint I continually go to as I run around the house and just consider breaking things from time to time. Every time I hear somebody talk about saving the Constitution died in 2002. The United States has had more than one coup d'etat. In 1934, there was an attempt by Merrill Lynch and DuPont Corporation to overthrow the U.S. government and place a Nazi dictatorship in the United States. If you don't know about this, it's called the business plot. It's an area on Wikipedia where the Israelis, for some reason, and I don't even know how they tie into it, but they've been tasked with wiping that and other areas of Wikipedia, an area Americans are stupid enough to look into for information. There's no place to get information, but you can actually go to the historychannel.com and for 1995, buy their 1-hour show on this, which is about as good as you can do. But they were going to march on Washington, get President Roosevelt, lock him in an insane asylum, and put a Nazi dictator there. And that was out of admiration. And I get mixed views on this sometimes. At Veterans Today, and this is where I work, we brought in a writer, Ingrid Zundel. Ingrid Zundel is a child psychologist. Ingrid Zundel is married to Ernst Zundel. Ernst Zundel is an individual who believes that the Holocaust did not happen. Now, there are a lot of people who believe this. We see it on TV every time we turn. The Holocaust is a big issue, and I'll be explaining why in a little bit. It's a scary idea, but all of us have this single view of the Holocaust, of the door being kicked down, poor Anne Frank being dragged out of her closet. It's the idea of pure terror, where monstrous people in uniforms are going to take you away. And the idea of the German Holocaust, the Nazis taking you to a camp and cutting your hair off, making you into soap and lampshades, is pretty much like the dream an awful lot of Americans have. Their guns being taken away. It's not a few Americans that think their own government is going to sell them out, black helicopters, people marching down the street. There's even a video game, I think it's called Homeland, where the police sell out the country to North Koreans. There really aren't that many North Koreans. I don't know if you checked or not. But we live in slavery. There are TV shows where the police sell us out to aliens, and they turn us all into shish kebabs. The police selling us out to some sort of conspiracy where we are turned into food, put into camps, whatever. It's a story we are continually told. One series after another. The idea, of course, is that our government is going to somehow use their guns, use Homeland Security, the bureaucracy we've built, to enslave us. And of course, the reality of that is it happened a long time ago. When they murdered JFK, they enslaved us. We have been slaves ever since that time. If we think that we've been electing people, if we think we've been running our own government, look at our judicial system here, how judges are elected. You vote for judges, you think. Well, judges, the people who decide, whether you or your wife get your kids, when you have that big screaming and hitting each other over the head match that 4 out of 5 American families has every 5 years. Whether you've been poisoned by a pharmaceutical company, whether they pay or not, the person who decides how long you spend in jail for something you may or may not have done wrong, decides whether the federal government can simply take everything you have away. The group that makes that decision are judges. The judges are chosen by little meetings of very, very rich people in every little section of the country. They sit together at the country club, and they decide what lawyer, failed lawyer, crook, and there's, and this is my apology to the decent judges out there, both of you, out of the thousands and thousands.
You mean the ones that are still alive? The ones that are still alive that haven't been assassinated?
Yep. They decide which failed, crooked lawyer is going to be sitting in robes where people are going to grovel up to him and say, "Your Honor, I pray to the court," to some individual who was placed in office by wealthy people who are considered the leaders of a political party. And
let me stop you for a moment here. I understand. Everything that you're saying is it's pretty much accurate as far as I can tell in my experience.
Well, I think your personal experience reflects that very well.
But somebody has tried to kill me. Somebody has tried to destroy my businesses, and it all points back to the ADL. And I know that you and Kaminsky, who I have on my show on a fairly regular basis too. You're kind of fighting with each other.
I just don't know about Kaminsky. Years ago, and I'm not sure your your viewers would know John Kaminsky.
Yes.
Kaminsky at one point, we had to say something. Kaminsky years and years ago was one of the guys who helped pave the way for other people to take a look at a conspiracy, and part of the conspiracy against Americans. Calling it a Jewish conspiracy is to some extent wrong. Now, here's a scary thing. I'm going to say some scary stuff.
I may be guilty of that too. I mean, the wealthiest people are.
Here's a story from yesterday, and I'll try to explain this pretty much as best I can.
Okay.
Now, if you want to get angry at me about something, I helped elect Barack Obama. Okay, I helped do that.
I get to date a lady that I'm very fond of that's helping me with my novels. That's been a wonderful support, And she voted for Barack Obama. I said, maybe God that's why God sent you to me, you know.
Well, I will tell you this, that the most reprehensible person on earth that I know of, and I got a good friend named Jeff Gates.
I do.
If you want to learn about criminal activity from a dispassionate, honest, decent person who understands tax code, can bore you to death, but a guy with a big thinker, it's Jeff Gates. And that would be, criminalstate.com, buy his book, Guilt by Association, where he equates that conspiracy we talk about as being a form of organized crime. Here was my idea, basically.
By the way, I have that book, and it's available right here on my website. You can call my number and get Jeff Gates' book.
Yeah, you can't be an American without having read the book. I don't care if it's $25 or not, but make sure you read it. Make sure everybody reads the book. You really can't understand. Anyway, back to Obama. Now, I grew up in under a couple of circumstances.
Is this who you were referring to as the most reprehensible person that you've ever met?
Absolutely. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I'm a Marine combat. I was a Marine combat infantryman in Vietnam. One of the people, at the time, a Marine sniper, but I was with the Marine Special Landing Team, 1st Battalion, 26 Marines. I'm a plane, like in the movies, one of many people with a group of people that slept on the ground every day, was starved to death, continually outnumbered, that I am a rare survivor of a group of people that fought in an utterly corrupt and stupid war, and every single one of us who were there at the time were totally aware of how corrupt the Vietnam War was and how corrupt the U.S. was. We talked about little else, but these were also, it was my family. Some of these guys that are alive are my best friends. Some of them are still with me as veterans today. I can tell you somebody who wasn't one of us, who wasn't on our side. A couple of people. One was Jane Fonda, who visited North Vietnam late in the war and was sympathetic to them. And another was John McCain, a wealthy boy who had gotten himself a job as a fighter pilot after a couple of missions.
You're referring to my Senator Songbird?
Yeah, Songbird John McCain.
Yes.
The guy who while in North Vietnam held classes to train their gunners, helped them position their anti-aircraft guns so they could shoot down what's estimated to have been 60 more American planes, who did 32 radio interviews and talked about being tortured and how about being treated very badly while he was almost continually meeting with the foreign press. Every communist, lefty, pinko, and I can't say the A word here, but I love swearing on radio, but every scumbag in the world, and who I'll equate to the people that went to Tripoli to visit with General Gaddafi, got those big fat checks, drank Dom Perignon, ate lobster every day, while the rebels that they said were CIA al-Qaeda barefoot fought against Gaddafi's mercenary army, while 40,000 people in Libya disappeared. We're not talking rebels or whatever, people who are suspected by Gaddafi of being unsympathetic. We're still looking for their bodies right now. But we had all those news stories from these internet, and they call themselves liberals, they call themselves anti-war. Well, what we found about all of these people is they all are ADL shills. Most of them think they're among us. Now, others who are simply blind, and we get into our talk about Kucinich, Kaminsky didn't get involved in the Libya issue. Kaminsky didn't like the idea that we have a large international bureau at Veterans Today. One of the things we decided to do, if we were going to represent veterans, I have veterans groups inside Israel, IDF. I've got IDF, former IDF members. I've even got former members of the Irgun, the Israeli terrorist groups, who write for Veterans Today. I've also got Egyptian Army. I've got Turks. I've got a ton of Pakistanis.
You talk about the Constitution being dead in this country, and what you're talking about now, it kind of fits a vision that I've had. I don't want to just take back this country. I want to take over the whole planning operation that they've already set up for the New World Order. You know, if we kick the assholes out of the top and take this whole substance back, start printing our own money for a change. I mean, couldn't we nationalize this whole banking scheme? I mean, Charles Collins said we could buy it back. Well, isn't there a way to take this out? Isn't there something we can do?
Oddly enough, this is a couple of shocks here for you. It's a shock for me too, because it's sneaking out into the press. Articles over the last couple of days. This is yesterday, and this is probably the biggest thing that's come out in a long, long time. It snuck into Huffington Post, which, of course, Huffington Post was always kind of, a weak sister publication. It went to AOL. It's now really a powerful news service because it went from a weak sister with weak editorial policies to being backed by a huge amount of money. And as a news service, frankly, since they've got 1 million times the money I have, and slightly more staff, since our guys are all volunteers. It's where I generally recruit people, by the way. If you work for Huffington Post, told the truth, got fired, or BBC or whatever, you come to Veterans Today. If you're a journalist and we're fired for telling them, not just about Israel or whatever. Israel's the issue of the day because Israel's involved in burying the United States. And we have a job. Saving the United States is our job. If Israel's involved in screwing the United States, we're going to stand up to Israel. The difference I have with John Kaminsky is that I go after Israel. He wants to go after Jewish people. I don't go after Jewish people. Here's the things we learned. This is kind of I wrote a book about Christian identity because I don't have any problem believing that my ancestors and yours walked out of the Middle East and crossed the Caucasus Mountains and dispersed. I really don't have any problem with that. I would track my relatives down to the Dnieper River in Russia. Part of those they're largely Nordic. I'm one of those 6'1", blonde-haired, blue-eyed people, where it is now tall, the perfect lumberjack. But when you add 60-some years to that, the hair is now gray. The waistline is not what it was. You can still put a flak jacket on me, hand me a rifle, tape up my knees, and at over 60 years old, I can still go out with a Marine Rifle Squad. You'll hear huffing and puffing, but I'm still capable of doing that. That's kind of an amazing thing about our generation, is those of us that have been able to stay alive. A lot of us have, although we're all poisoned with Agent Orange, our younger generation with Gulf War illness, we have been fed medications by pharmaceutical companies that are murdering us. We have been fed air and water. But let me jump into this. It's this area here that I'm almost afraid to go into. It's a story from Huffington Post. theoretically, this was my big... Why did I vote for Barack Obama? Hoping it was going to be an angry... I'm going to call him the angry Negro. It was about time we had somebody like this. I knew he had 25 IQ points on the moron John McCain, the shill of organized crime. John McCain represents the mob. John McCain represents drug dealers. John McCain represents the bankster enemies of the U.S. John McCain is the worst possible candidate we've ever had. He would have destroyed the United States.
But he had a cute vice president.
Well, what I wanted is I wanted Bush, Cheney, Rove, Gonzalez, Ashcroft, the entire Israeli mob at the National Security Council, except for the few that have actually joined Veterans Today as time has gone on. I wanted them all arrested and tried. I wanted the Israelis involved in 9/11, and Abe Foxman out there, it wasn't just the dancing Israelis that went on Israeli TV and said they were sent to the United States to, quote, document the event, foreknowledge. It was the ones arrested on the George Washington Bridge with enough explosives to take the bridge down. It's the group that NYPD, and I have a lot of police friends. I have a lot of FBI friends. I'm a defense contractor. If you're going to go to some rat hole country, and I won't call clients that, but yeah, I do. They know that things are like, and trained police or trained intelligence people, one of the people you work for is me. So I have a lot of access. Plus these guys and everyone else, including Jews in the United States, like me a lot more than they like you, because I'm not a total dickhead, and you are. So, yeah, go ahead and come after me. See how it works out for you. You've tried it for the last 5 years. You're sitting there where you and Dick Cheney are the two most hated people in the United States, and I have 580,000 subscribers. You have a website that nobody reads. Absolutely nobody reads. Well, why is this simply the case? Well, my biggest supporters, 500,000 Jews, were in the streets of Israel marching against Abe Foxman and the Lakudis gang last week. They can't stand them anymore. The Israeli people are having their own Arab Spring, and we're 100% behind them, as are our brothers in Egypt, the ones who overthrew the monstrous dictatorship of the Rothschilds that we knew of as the Gaddafi regime. No, wait a minute, he was the independent guy that stood up against people. That's what the ADL was telling you. If you want to know who and this is this term shill, and people learn a word and they throw it around and they love saying,
oh, yeah, I get you,
you're a shill,
yeah.
You're a shill. Well, who the shills are? This is who shills are. Anyone who has ever written a positive word about WikiLeaks and Julian Assange works for the Israelis, works for the international banksters. Now, it's not the only person, Assange and WikiLeaks aren't the only person. I call it like a blister, the French call it ouvrage, where a disease comes to the surface and you can name it. You know, it's one of these things you can be sick for a week, but until you get really sick, they don't know what it is and they don't know what medicine to give you. Julian Assange is one of those things. I had a talk with a phony Arab network that was trying to invite me on a talk show instead of this one this morning, claiming I'd have a worldwide audience. No. And a very simple question